All right, let's dive into a totally wild idea today. What if the real secret to getting great at something is to spend a little more time doing things you're, well, kind of bad at? It sounds completely backwards, I know, but the science here might just change how you think about learning, about your job, and maybe even about happiness itself.
So let's really chew on that question for a second. We spend so much of our lives trying to avoid messing up, right? We stick to what we know, to our strengths. But what if that feeling of discomfort, that awkwardness of being a total beginner, what if that's actually a hidden superpower? Let's find out. Okay, to really get this, we've got to look at a story from the author Arthur C. Brooks. His whole journey with this idea kicks off with something super uncomfortable, giving a professional speech in a language he hasn't even come close to mastering. So picture this. Brooks is a pro at public speaking in English, but he deliberately puts himself in situations where he gives talks in Spanish and Catalan, languages he learned as an adult. He knows he has an accent. He knows he can't get into the nitty-gritty of the science like he can in English. And as he says, it's just uncomfortable. It's a very intentional choice to be bad at something and to do it in public.
Now, you'd think the only payoff here would be getting better at Spanish and Catalan. And yeah, he did. But here's the twist, the totally unexpected side effect. All that struggle actually made him a better, more dynamic speaker in English, his native language. And this is the key idea we're going to unpack today. Doing something you're not good at can somehow make you even better at what you're already good at. So, if this is so good for us, why do we avoid that feeling like the plague? Why is our first instinct to run screaming in the other direction? Well, as it turns out, the answer is hardwired right into our brains. And it's a fair question, right? Because it's not just in your head. When you try something new and you just completely bomb, trying to snowboard for the first time or fumbling through a big presentation, it can literally feel painful. There's a real neurological reason for that sting. So it all comes down to this one part of the brain called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. When you're trying to do something and you hit a wall, this area just lights up. And what's really fascinating is that this is a major player in the same pain network that gets triggered when we feel social rejection. So in a very real biological sense, your brain processes failure a lot like it processes being kicked out of the group. But here's where it gets interesting. That pain isn't there just to punish you. It's actually a tool. It evolved to create this incredibly powerful drive to get better, either at the thing you failed at or, believe it or not, at something else entirely. It's like our brain's way of saying, ouch, let's find some competence somewhere to make this feeling stop. And this baseball study just nails the concept. Researchers took a bunch of skilled pitchers, who are, usually terrible hitters, and had them take batting practice. Of course, their batting performance was awful, and their frustration level was through the roof. But that frustration didn't just make them give up. It actually lit a fire under them, boosting their motivation to be even better at pitching, the thing they were already experts at. The failure in one area literally fueled their excellence in another. Okay, so we get it. Failure hurts, but it also motivates. The big question is, how do we consciously use this? How do we hack our own brains to turn that discomfort into actual, real progress? Well, it turns out there are a couple of mental tricks we can use. I mean, this quote, it sounds nuts, right? It comes from a study at an improv club where a group of amateurs was told to do exactly this. Don't run from the awkwardness, lean into it, look for it. And that one little instruction completely changed the game for them. It's all about a mental flip. By starting to see that cringy, awkward feeling, not as a sign that they were failing, but as proof they were learning and stretching their skills, they dove in. They got way more engaged and they got way more out of it. So the takeaway here is to tell yourself, okay, this uncomfortable feeling, this is the feeling of growth. Now, this ties into what we do after we fail. We all tend to dwell on it, to ruminate, but there are two totally different ways to do that. The first is destructive rumination. That's when you make it about you. What does this say about me? Am I just not smart enough? That road just leads to frustration. But the alternative is called action rumination. This is where you focus on the task itself. You replay your missteps almost like a detective, not to beat yourself up, but to figure out what specifically to do differently next time. And that leads to actual improvement. All right, enough theory. Let's get practical. How can we actually apply this whole idea of productive failure in our day-to-day lives? From dating to our jobs. Let's take dating, which can be a minefield of rejection, right? First, instead of hating that nervousness you feel, try to see it as a sign you're in a learning zone. Second, if a date goes poorly, don't let your brain spiral into self-criticism. Use that action rumination. Analyze what happened, see what you could try differently. And third, take that jolt of motivational energy from the rejection and pour it into the relationships that are already strong with your family and your friends. And hey, if you're a student, listen up. This is for you. Go take that programming class even if you're an English major. Sign up for that pottery class if you're studying chemistry. The sheer struggle of dealing with a brand new challenge can actually sharpen your focus and boost your performance in the subjects you already excel at.
This works in the office too. There's this idea called the 75-25 rule. Basically, you spend about 75% of your time on your main job responsibilities and the other 25% helping your colleagues with tasks that are totally outside your wheelhouse. Now, yeah, in the short term, there's a little friction, but the long-term payoff is massive. You get more motivation for your own job, you pick up new skills, and the whole team becomes more creative and collaborative.
Okay, let's zoom out one last time, because this isn't just about learning skills or being better at work. This whole principle of embracing discomfort, it applies to the pursuit of happiness itself. We all want to be happy, of course, but that doesn't mean trying to avoid unhappiness at all costs. Emotions like fear, anger, and sadness, they aren't failures. They are just a normal, natural part of being human. And by learning to deal with them openly, even when it's uncomfortable, we're basically building our emotional muscles. And the paradox is, by confronting those tougher emotions, we actually get better at savoring the truly joyful moments in life. And, to bring this all full circle, Arthur C. Brooks stumbled upon an old Catalan proverb that just perfectly sums up this entire idea. It's simple, it's poetic, and it gets right to the point. He who doesn't take a risk catches no fish. Or, as we'd probably say, nothing ventured, nothing gained. It's that simple. If you want the reward, whether it's a new language, a better career, or just a richer, fuller life, you have to be willing to take the risk of failing. You have to be willing to come up empty-handed sometimes. So I'll leave you with this final thought. A question to ask yourself. We spend so much time and energy figuring out what we want to be great at, but maybe, just maybe, the more important question for our own growth, for our own happiness, is this one. What are you willing to be bad at?